roll call. And well, first of all, thank you all for coming out to join us tonight. We always like to see our citizens out participating. We appreciate it very much. Michael, would you do the roll call?
Yes. Vice Mayor Watts.
Here.
Councilwoman Knappel. Councilwoman Scott.
Here.
Councilman Ebel.
Here.
Councilman Petty.
Here.
Councilman Reese.
Here.
And City Attorney Bass.
Here.
Okay. Under consideration of the minutes, have you all had a chance to read and check out the minutes? So do I hear a motion that we approve these?
Motion. Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and it's approved as you have read them. Okay. Do we need to do a roll call on this?
It's up to you.
Okay. This may be a very short and sweet meeting, we hope tonight. Okay, consideration of bills over $2,000. Michael?
There were only two. And I have those bills. You should have the breakdown there in front of you. I have the bills here if anybody would like to look at them.
Can I see?
Just a brief overview of what they are.
The one of them is the final building inspection fee for Mr. Warren, and the other is a transmission for truck number 7 in the street department.
Is a truck on the street department, you said?
Yes. Last, is it street or water and sewer? Street.
You want to see these?
Okay, any further questions on these?
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
Second.
Motion to approve, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Okay, is anyone opposed? I'm sorry. Yes. Okay. The mayor's report is next. Just a very quick report. I want to just brag a little bit on my employees. My supervisors have been having a weekly meeting for the last 4 weeks. We've accomplished a lot, I think. We've come up with some new job descriptions with the help of Mr. Tom Moore, who's been sort of helping us tweak those. We've got some great job descriptions now for every employee. We have some evaluation forms that our supervisors have come up with. We've signed off on personnel policies once more, so everything in their files is now up to date. It's taken us 3-4 weeks to do this, and I want to thank you for your hard work on putting all of this together. We really appreciate it. We also have come up with a theme of sorts for our city. It's to make Carthage safe, healthy, beautiful, and financially solvent. And we're putting it out there to all of our citizens. What can you do to help us make this happen? We've come up with several bullet points of how we're going to do it within our supervisors. We'd like to throw it out to the council. When you're riding around town, if you see things you'd like to put in suggestion form, please bring it to us. We're putting together a master plan of all of the things that we are hearing around town. People who've gone door to door during campaigns have made lists of things they would like, and all together we're hoping to put together a short-term and long-term plan. How can we go forward and make Carthage a better place for all of us? So I'm really proud of our supervisors for coming up with this mission statement, how we're going to go forward with that. I want to thank them. I've attended a few board meetings, the Railroad Board and UCH, RA, UCDD, very interesting boards. Other than that, we are moving along very quickly. I have been talking to a few businesses, hopefully that somewhere down the line we may be able to draw into Carthage. After a few more conversations, it'll be somewhere down the line. But I hope we can all go out and try to see what we can bring into Carthage to help us get our economy thriving again. The next report comes from our city attorney.
No report.
All right. Department reports. The water plant, Ms. Teresa.
I don't have anything new right now.
Okay. But your flock labor is running well, is that
Yes.
correct? We've had a lot of fun with that. Okay. It's an interesting part they have there. The sewer plant, Mr. Stan.
Only thing I'm gonna bring up to date is in October, the council approved us replacing 2 seal failure cables at the main lift station. Well, the contractor showed up today, got one of them replaced, and the other new one that he brought, when he got looking at it, had some defects. So we got the job partly done. They're gonna come back and finish it, but we appreciate y'all approving this. It's something we really need. And Wascon came and poured a pump at the radio station that was plugged today, got it fixed. So Other than that, everything, just a lot of water coming in right now.
That's
and,
right. All
We've
right.
been averaging about 1.5 million a day this week, and that's double capacity. So
Wow. Gosh.
hopefully, you know, we'll get some of that worked on, but other than that, everything's good.
Okay, thank you very much. Police Department.
I don't have anything at this time.
Well, you do have. Tell us about your new arrival.
I was fortunate enough to, my wife pregnant, she ended up giving birth right before Christmas, so
Oh,
that's where I've been for a little bit.
and
So.
her name is?
Her name is Arabella Grace.
Well, all right.
Great.
Congratulations. Very good, very good. Okay, the fire department. Chief Hunt.
Just my written report.
Okay, all right, thank you. Public Works, Mr. West.
Everything's good.
Up and running. This is good, thank you. City Recorder, Mr. Michael.
Still working on getting quotes for the antivirus and security. Other than that, the only other thing I have is we had a restaurant change its name, so I'll have to get you guys to sign off on the updated beer permit. Doesn't have to be approved again, just have to get the signatures on it, because it was just a change of name, not an ownership. So, but since you are the beer board, I'm just gonna make you aware.
Okay.
I've got everybody's names on. I just need to get the mayor's signature on it.
Okay.
Who is it?
Huh?
Who was it?
Acapulco.
Okay.
They went to LLC instead of just Acapulco. So.
Okay, great, all right. Old business. Okay, we're gonna start with, we have Mr. John Poole, who's our auditor, financial auditor, and I also have copies of a letter I want to give to you that former Mayor Hodge brought to me, which you may already have this, I don't know, it was from the comptroller.
Sure. And I think, your permission, since I may speak for 5 or 10 minutes,
Sure.
permission to be moved last, that way if there's anyone else who may want to leave, I just ask you for permission if you want to move me down, because I would like to talk, well, I'm just saying.
Oh,
there may be
We're fine,
people
we're a
that
very
may
short meeting.
Well.
today, so, but-
Okay.
But what I'd like to do is give everyone a copy of this letter, because and again, you may have a copy of this, but it's what the comptroller sent her in 2011. And you'll explain this much better, but it appears that the utilities have to make a profit. And we weren't, and so they sent her this letter, and she followed up, and they said, either you start making a profit, or we have to come in and do it for you. So let me give you this letter, and then I know you'll talk much more to that, but then she has included how they brought it up, and where they were before going in their arrears, and how they brought it up from 175,000 in arrears to 150,000 in the clear. So just, I'll give you, so you'll know a little bit background on this.
Are we in a negative now?
No, no. She brought it back up. It was in a negative because they hadn't increased the rates every, but he'll tell you about this.
Okay, I just
That's what
don't
he's-
understand why we're talking about something in 2011 if it's not
Well,
an issue
because
now.
people everywhere in town want to know why our rates have gone up. And so this, for once and all, we're going to get the explanation out there to everybody. That's okay, sir.
No, we have done this before, just for the record, we have gone over all this
Okay,
before.
well,
I haven't.
New folks have
yeah,
not.
I have not, so
anybody else need a copy? Okay.
I do, yes, please.
Okay,
Thank you.
we'll just get it out to the public, because I can't tell you how many people, when I was campaigning, said, I don't understand why our rates, and I think there are people here tonight who would like to hear that, and maybe then you can take it back to folks and help them understand, that's okay. All right, yes, sir, Mr. John Toole, thank
Don't
you.
mind, Come on. Mayor, would it be okay if I passed out? I have copies of the audit. I don't know if that would be permissible to pass out to members who may or may not.
Would you like, that's
Okay,
fine.
yes.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, let me just, if you'll take some, and I hope I have enough. If not, these are on the comptroller's website.
Okay,
Well, I tell you what, let me just address the issue, and then I'll kind of back up and just talk about, in these big booklets you have, let me have you turn to page 19. That's probably the most important page. If I was a board member or a citizen, I'd want to look at. This board is probably familiar that the state requires us to keep our monies in what we call different set of books. There's a set of books or a fund that we call for water and sewer that runs our water and sewer operations, and then there's a different set of funds for what we call general fund, and that's where our property tax goes and sales tax, and then we'll talk about those things. But probably the set of monies or the funds that get most municipalities I won't say in trouble, but under some scrutiny of utility fund. And it says, the mayor mentioned, about 10 years ago, the state kind of changed the way that it viewed these utility funds, as opposed to a water and sewer, or if we had electric or gas, as opposed to being a service like our police department is. They kind of said, no, really what you ought to be is a business. And the reason they did that, the drought of 2010, the recession, almost every utility, every city that wanted some work done was coming to the state asking for money, and the state said, "We can't." So they changed the rules. And basically in your water and sewer fund, no other monies, you have to make a profit at least every other year. The state wants you to be able to charge sufficient amount of monies so that in the long term, when you do need to start replacing these main lines or you want to extend to new customers, that you have sufficient funds in order to do that. And I guess in their estimation, the best way to do that is to make sure, like you said, that every year you're profitable. So there on page 19, just going to show you, I wish these things were more straightforward, but they're just not. Revenues at the top, expenses at the bottom, but there's a line 3/4 of the way down the page that says net change in net position. It's just a government's way of saying profit or loss. You can see it's a pretty big number, 525,000. There's a but to it, and the but is this. That line right up above it that says contributed capital, those are grants. Those are not monies you're going to get every other year. So you can basically back that out. So if you back out those grants, we got a 250 from the surplus. We still had a surplus of a little bit over $250,000 for the water and sewer. And that's certainly good. And what that will allow you to do is to be able to store up enough funds so that when projects do come down the road, you will be able to pay for it. Let me have you turn to the previous page. One of the questions that comes up all the time when it relates to utilities, and why are we going up on rates and all those kind of things is, well, look here on page 18. And this is just a page that shows for that utility fund, the amount of monies we have, the amount of money we owe, and those kind of things. Up at the top, it says that the utility fund has over $1.8 million. And that's terrific. If Bill Gates were to walk in here tomorrow and give us $10 million, wouldn't matter. The state law is you have to be profitable. No matter how much money you got in the bank, you have to continue to be profitable. And so that's why literally, if I had to guess, 75% of the water places that provide water and sewer have had to go on a rate simply to comply with this state law, which I think, just my opinion, no one else's, is probably a good thing in the long term. It's what the electric systems have been doing forever. It's what the natural gas system's been doing forever. Water and sewer, they just kind of were, from the state standpoint, just kind of lagging behind, and all they did was kind of get them up to speed, so that in the long run, that things should be cheaper and that you should be able to less borrowing, those kind of things. Just one more thing to point out here, and I'm probably talking more than I should. Once again on 18, there is a number there that says utility plan in service, and it's $11 million. That says over the history of the town, we've literally spent $11 million to put the water and sewer infrastructure, like the plants and the lines and those kind of things, which is neither good nor bad. And then there's a line about 3/4 way down the page that talks about long-term debt, $2 million. So of the $11 million, we only owe $2 million. I mean, that's not bad. You think of it, you're owning your house, you have a $100,000 house, we only owe $20,000 on the house. So obviously, boards previous to this have done a pretty good job of making sure that we kept debts down to minimum. And that doesn't mean borrowing money is necessarily bad. Sometimes when you do the projects that you do for water and sewer, you just have to borrow. But that's kind of where we're at is from the utility system. And I don't know if that answers any questions that there were regarding rates and those kind of things.
Maybe why I hear it over and over, suddenly there was a dramatic rise, and I think we've clarified why, so maybe those of you out there who had that dramatic rise.
Many places had to double.
Yeah.
I take you up the road to line to double. Gainesville, almost double. So,
Because it was a new law that came into effect.
New law that came into effect,
Right.
and like you said, they were yes.
Right.
So let me very quickly just talk about some of the other funds. Let me have you go back to page 16, and this will just kind of sum up the numbers, and then I want to talk about some of the non-numbers. Here on page 16, and this is just a summary, starting on page 21, it will break into detail. These are the other monies. General fund, there's a drug fund, which is a special set of monies the police has for its when it receives drug fines. Sanitation fund, which is very similar to a utility, but luckily the state doesn't consider it. And then State Street Aid Fund, which is, we get monies from the state, gasoline taxes, those have to be separated and can only be spent on streets. And once again, revenues at the top, expenses, 3/4 way down the page, there is a line that says excess deficiency of revenues over expenses. I wish they would just say profit or loss, but you can see basically the general fund, the big monies had a surplus, the drug fund, small, spent a little bit more than it took in, not significant. Sanitation fund, once again, took in slightly more than it spent, and you can see there the State Street Aid Fund. So certainly overall, for the year ending June 30th, 2018, city showed surpluses, which it has for the last couple of years, and that's why, if you look at the bank balances, there are some funds that are available and very minimal debt. So that's the numbers, and I'll be glad to talk about the numbers. If anyone has a question, be glad to do that. Really, what I want to do is just take a minute and just talk about what the audit is and what we were trying to accomplish. One of those is to provide this report, which the state requires. But really, in doing the audit, we're trying to do two things for the citizens. One, make sure the monies that the town should be receiving, whether that's from your property tax, your billing, your utility billings, money from the state, money from the county, making sure police fines, making sure all those monies that we should be receiving, that we are receiving those monies. And certainly as your auditor, I believe you are. You're certainly on the utility side, you're gonna have some customers that don't pay. But we just call it business risk. I do think the town does a pretty good job of making sure there are turnoffs. Property taxes, you're gonna have some folks that don't pay, but we do a good job of tracking that, turning that money over to the county so that hopefully eventually we will receive some of those monies. And then once we receive those monies, making sure we're handling those good business practices, making sure we're following the town's rules and procedures, and making sure we're following the state regulations as far as getting those into the bank, and making sure those banks are appropriate, and that's it. So just as far as money's coming in, we just didn't see anything that gave us concern. And then the second thing, which is I certainly think the most important, is making sure monies that this board approves to spend through the annual budget, making sure, first of all, that the monies are being spent on town business. And I know that sounds kind of unusual, because what else would you spend it on? But sometimes things happen that shouldn't happen. One of the things that we as auditors come here doing is we come trying to look for those things, looking for areas where it's more likely money could be misused, travel, and all those kind of things. We just didn't find anything that we think we would need to make this board aware of. And we really try to emphasize looking at the money spent. First of all, making sure it's being spent on town business. Making sure that we're following our policies and procedures when it comes to purchasing and bidding and following grants, when their monies are being spent for grants. Just making sure that we're using common sense as far as buying things, and we're documenting those things, and there's proper approvals. And once again, as auditors, we just didn't see anything that really concerned us as far as money's being spent. And that's really the most important thing I wanted to talk about. I'm always glad to talk about numbers, but I think it's more important just to talk about, hey, what we did and what we found, which was not much, and just kind of give some sense so that when we talk about the annual audit, the board and citizens kind of know what we're talking about. I do want to mention that my name and phone number is on page 1 of this report. It'll take you a couple of pages to get to page 1. But any member of this board, any citizen, you can call me at any time at that number. As I mentioned, this report will be on the conference website, so if anyone ever wants to download that, you certainly can. Amir, that's really the report. I don't know if it's appropriate to ask if there are any questions. I don't know if that's, I know you've just gotten this and it's lots to see, but.
Is there a P&L section for like years past, let's say like since 2012? Do we have anything like
No,
that?
but that website, and once again, I can give you that. All those reports are filed. So each year, these reports are so thick, to have more than 1 year in there would be tough. But yeah, those are on the website. I don't know exactly how far pretty close to 2012. If I had to guess, we can certainly have. We can get them if they're not on the website. They're probably dated.
2010.
2010. Yeah.
2010. Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Is there a debt liability that we have in here as well?
If you would let me, I mentioned it briefly. Let me give you a better schedule of that. If you'll turn to page 60. as of last June. What we call the utility funds does have some debt. There is some, you can see here, there is one loan that has finalized, and then there are some, if you'll read that line there at the bottom, there was still some funding going on, and so those amounts hadn't been finalized. We're pretty close to it, but still some activity going on. But basically, you add that note at the bottom, the 1.3 and the 500,000. I mentioned that 1.8 million earlier, but that's the only debt, and it belongs to the water and sewer. It can only be paid by water and sewer monies. There are no debts on the, what we call the governmental side, the property tax side.
It's mostly infrastructure.
Oh, yeah, all of this would be, yes, the improvements that we've made.
And again, I'm kind of more familiar with the civilian sector. Is there any early pay? Like, does that basically do we have the ability to pay early, take interest off?
Yes, and I can tell you, because these loans are still in the funding process, we must admit, we've had discussions about looking at our bank balances, comparing that to the debt. We haven't really had debt till recently, of course, some new projects, but yes, there are no prepayment penalties on these loans once they fund it.
So do you ever see, and again, I apologize, I'm asking some of the questions. Do you ever see, like if we have let's say we have a surplus, like I forgot what that surplus was that you said earlier, but we have a surplus on it and we can use that funding to say, okay, well, since we got that surplus, obviously we want to keep some in the bank for if there's a problem, but, maybe help save some taxpayer money, hit on that interest. Do other city governments do that?
We all do that. Like you said, that's a discussion, we've already had that, because the loan hasn't even filled out, it's kind of hard to say,
Okay.
can we, yeah. And don't forget, interest on these, I'm going to look here, we're not paying 2%. Yeah, it's probably less than 2%. Some of this
1.5 or something.
some of these amounts are actually even being forgiven. It's a complicated conversation, probably not one for here, but the special grant loan program, so I think every year some of this is forgiven. But no, I think it's forgiven as it's funded.
Yes.
So sorry. So this is, yeah. So what I said about forgiven, that's already accounted for before we get here. But we have had those conversations, just want to wait till they're funded, and you're one of the few places where I think what you're earning is higher than what you're paying, which is strange, but it's because it's a grant. It's a loan, but it's really a grant.
Gotcha.
So,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
All right.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it very much. Thank you. I hope that for some of us maybe who weren't aware of this, I hope it's been helpful for them.
Before we go on
Yes.
to the next topic, one of the biggest complaints I've heard from my neighbors and other people is the fact that their, excuse me, that their water bill would be this amount, mine would be this amount.
Right.
And so they don't understand what the difference is. Of course, meters are red, I'm sure, but they can't understand, I show them this right here, they would not understand what I'm talking about.
Right.
But to the person, my neighbor or whatever, they don't understand all this. And they want to know, why is my bill such and such and your bill is such and such? You see what I'm saying? And basically we have the same, we may be single, I am, and they may be single, and why is theirs a lot more than mine? I know that they read the bills, the meters, but how do we address that?
Well, just a little bit of knowledge I have of this, we have digital meters, so they are pretty accurate.
Okay.
So I would imagine they should check their lines, first of all, to see if there's a leak. And if that could be a big difference in their bill if there is. If it's on their side.
So they can request that at any time,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr.
Yeah,
Les and
yeah.
his crew will go out and check and see if there is actually a leak there.
Okay.
With the new electronic meters bill, they can actually come out and do a profile with a handheld and do a history and see when the water's running the most.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Are
Which I've been told most of the time it's a commode.
Yes. We've heard that a lot here
But
lately.
yes, we tell them if they need to check for a leak, we can certainly come out and do that.
Are
Teresa, you want to add anything? No?
Oh, that's usually Les's
Okay, all
department.
right.
Are there different rate classes
No.
Okay,
No,
okay.
it's just the amount of water going
Just,
through.
okay, gotcha.
And remember, our bills are water, sewer, and trash, so sometimes I
Exactly.
think people might confuse, I don't know, they might not, but if you have a leak, they can come out and check and help find that.
Okay.
And I would highly recommend tell them that, because it's a good service.
Check it anytime, yeah.
Yeah.
And the age of the appliance too. The newer appliances use less water, so that can make a
Right.
difference.
That's true, that's a good point, yeah. But just tell them to call the office and we can get someone out to check it. We have a great crew who does that, yeah. All right,
Before we leave this way, I think normally we accept the audit, don't we? Make a motion to accept the audit.
Yes.
I'll make the motion to accept the audit.
thank you.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any discussion, any opposed? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
for coming out. We're gonna talk a little bit about the grants. I've asked Ms. Dawn, I had such a hard time with your Kupfer, I get it right this time. She's given us a color-coded sheet here of some of the grants that are remaining, some that we're backing away from. And I'll let you explain more. I do want to tell you, another thing that's come out of our supervisor meetings is that we're going to try to take a new approach to the monies that we're looking for. Our supervisors pretty well know on the ground what's happening, more than anybody, so we're going to start doing a study of what our needs actually are, first of all, and how those needs would affect the neighborhoods proposed, how they would affect our environment, our traffic, everything. So we have a full, clear view of what it is we actually need before we start going out for grants or monies or foundation, whatever it happens to be. So I think it's going to be a wiser approach, and our supervisors have kind of come up with, let's try this. So I'd like to throw that out, that's what we're going to do. So in the future, when we put out a call or bid for grants or for money of any kind, we'll have that needs study going first before we'll go out looking for that. So that's another part of, if you know of needs study, help us figure that out before the fact so we know where we're going with this. Okay. Would you like to just give a kind of an update on some of
I probably would just ask questions because
Okay.
I sent this to you and
Okay.
on Monday. Is there any questions? Because, I mean, I've talked about these things for a long time, but I can't go through each one, but was there any specific questions that
I
you
know the
guys had?
facade grant, I think there's some, we wanted to know a little bit about
So
when the meetings are going to, or
Okay.
what's next.
let's talk about the facade grant. That's actually a really good one to talk about because that's going to bring some economic prosperity to the downtown area. I think we'll see some differences in the downtown based on national data. So we have a Carthage, Tennessee Downtowns program that we applied for several years back, did an application and set up a committee, and Judy Smith is your Carthage, Tennessee Downtowns committee chairperson. And she's the one that went to all the webinars and all the meetings and everything like that and held the committee together and got the $15,000 grant and did some work in the downtown area. So you cannot get certain pots of money from the state of Tennessee or the federal government if you don't already have something in place. And it's usually based on planning and technical assistance. So by getting the Tennessee Downtowns program in place in Carthage, we were eligible for what is called a commercial facade grant. And this is a pot of money that only goes to these communities. And this is money that is given through a municipality to give to building owners to fix up the facades and other attachments to their buildings if they put in an application. It's a whole process. You just can't come into the city and say, I want $50,000 to, paint my building in downtown purple. There is an application process. There is a committee that is set up, and of course Judy Smith will be on that committee because she's the coordinator of the Tennessee Downtowns program. The mayor, of course, will be on the committee, and she will appoint some people to the committee. And the money, we received $97,751, and this money will go out to buildings in the downtown area that meet certain criteria. And the criteria loosely, right now, are front and back facades, the back, if they have parking in the back, if they need to get people off the main street and get them coming through the back door, awnings, brickwork, mortar work, some painting, windows, doors, no roofs, no interior, and they can put in an application. So we have to have a meeting to talk about the template that I have set up for you, and you guys can add and take away from it. And then you'll take that to every building owner in the downtown, and everybody has the opportunity in the downtown to put in an application. And then you'll come back with the committee and start looking them over and make sure they meet the criteria. And then you'll choose projects based on the amount of money you have and what they ask for.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Does that committee, that's the one who decides who gets what grants?
Yeah, that would be who get, yes.
Is this historical?
It's for the buildings in the downtown. It has to meet 106 guidelines, of course. So there is a historical element, and it has to be approved by the Tennessee Historical Commission. And that's where, you, as administrator of it, I would make sure that you're meeting those. My business partner is the Historic Preservation Coordinator, so he'll look at those and make sure that anything that's submitted will even pass that.
So if I'm understanding, the process is the local committee selects first and passes it on to the state historical, and they say, okay, is that right?
Yes, correct. Actually, they don't even have to pass it on to the state. What we do is we pick the building, they tell us what it is, we take an initial, Randy takes an initial review of it. He does a 106 review on it. Then we send it to the state with his review, and they say, oh yeah, that's fine. They say it's in compliance, usually.
The city's not on the hook for any of these monies. It's just whoever the building belongs to. They're on the hook for the part of the matching. City just stays out of it as far as they don't. There's no funding coming from the city.
So what'll happen is, once you pick a project, then you will enter into a contract with the building owner, but the building owner enters into a contract with the contractor who's going to do the work. But you have approval of the contractor, because that'll be spelled out in your contract with the building owner. So he can't enter into a contract with the contractor to do the work. So what'll happen is, let's just say it's a he, the building owner, pays the contractor for the work. He will submit a bill to the city for 75% of the cost of that work. The city will then put it in a spreadsheet and send it to the state. The state will give the city the money, and the city has 3 days to take that money that they have given them and give it to the building owner. Now, at the end of the process, the building owner has already agreed in the contracts with you that they will have a 5-year lien. You will place a lien on their property for 5 years. And every year, less of the payback is due if they sell the building. So if they sell the building in 1 year, they have to pay back 80% of the money that they got free. After 5 years, we'll take the lien off of the building, and there will be no lien against the building.
The city does the lien, not the state.
The city does the lien.
And let's say somebody sells it 2 years down the road or something.
It's
Now,
like,
how long do they have to pay back or whatever? So that'd be 60%.
Yeah, they have to pay it back within 6 months.
6 months of payback time.
So they'll give us the guidelines, like you can do this, 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 kind of like they do in Jonesboro. If you've ever been there, you can't do anything without, you can't paint your building without approval. Because you wouldn't want this building here to be modernized and then the next building to be restored.
And yes, you're absolutely correct. So what I gave the mayor was the templates that I used when I set this up for McMinnville and Monterey years ago. And I said, here's your template. We can use this as a loose guideline. But then I also gave her a packet of Department of Interior guidelines for historic buildings so that you can choose. And then on top of that, Judy has gone through all the meetings and all the different things, so she has a good concept of what is also what you might want to consider. So you'll put together a package, have your committee meet, and then you'll put it out to the community. And we'll guide you along the way.
I've got a question on that. And Judy, you may can answer this better than I can, but it's my understanding when were designated a historic district, that we had the right to choose which tier that we were in.
We're not a historic district.
We're not here?
We're not, we've never been
We
said it's
tried.
been
See,
historic.
it was my understanding that Tennessee downtowns had to be in a historic district.
No,
That's what we were told,
none of our buildings are actually designated as that.
really.
We would get some benefits from that if they were. We would have tax,
We tried.
yeah, we've had,
Fast.
we could get some
There's
tax
several buildings that
reductions on
qualify.
it, there's a lot of things. But everybody has to agree. You can't pick and choose. This person says I'll be historic and the one next door says I don't want to. All the buildings have to be under that guideline. So that's what you get into. So, you know, it has its pros and
We
cons.
kind of have a
Consistent
plethora of
throughout,
buildings, don't we?
Yeah.
No, the interesting is, never mind.
Never mind.
Never mind. A little experience with this.
Okay,
With
Thank
it
you.
in Gainesville.
are there any other questions about anything you see in here that
I don't have a copy of that, but, I would like some information about the amphitheater grant, what happens with that, and
We,
Okay, so, on the amphitheater grant, as you know, the first set of bids that we did, they came in high. So, that was about the same time that, the administration changed. And the new administration, was concerned about the amphitheater based on some people down there who were not interested in it. So, she has asked us to do a letter, so we did a letter, to send to the general counsel for the Department of Tourism and, break the contract with the state and, give back the money. The only part that you would be out would be, I think it is $10,000, and that would be to pay me, because you know, when I write the grants, you don't pay me to write the grants, you pay me for the admin. So the admin that I'd already done, and then Jerry Warren did all the plans and specs up to the bidding process for it. So altogether, you just have to pay that out of pocket, as opposed to, because there's no grant now.
So we're on the hook for paying 10, is it 10K
It's,
for both, or?
It's together, the cost is the $9,950 total. It'll be $9,950 for both my services and Jerry's services that were already done.
I thought the council had discussed rebidding that project instead of just trashing it.
Yeah,
Is that
and the council
incorrect?
should be the one to decide what happens one way or the other, not one person, because we agreed on it, we voted on it, so.
What was our deadline to use that grant?
It was a 2-year grant.
When does it run out though? I mean,
2 years from April 1st, let's see, let me look at it real quick. July, so 18, 19, 20, 2020,
July of 2020.
right.
Was it set in stone on the stipulation of that grant in that specific, has to be in that specific area?
No.
Okay, so it could be, like, for example, I ran into a ton of constituents that were in that area because they were like, we don't want this because it's loud. Like, we moved here for peace and quiet. If we found a different area for it and we came down on the bid where the city wasn't on the hook and it wasn't that way, is that would be acceptable?
Yes, it has to be city property, and it has to be, I'd have to do kind of a cursory environmental review of it, just kind of look it over and make sure that and I'd ask Jerry to help me a little bit, just to make sure that it's something that we could build on. But yeah, you could move it anywhere you wanted it, as long as it's city property.
we would still pay the 20%. But it would be,
Yeah, you still have to pay, okay, so the grant was for, you got 55,000, you had to match 23,463, based on the first bid, and you can always rebid it, you can also take components of it, and Judy Smith had a real good idea. She was saying that we can ask people for donations of material or even bid it out, see if we could talk to a bunch of contractors locally, because, right now, as Jerry, I believe you said at one of the city council meetings, correct me if I'm wrong, because I wasn't here, but, there was so much work around when this went out to bid, that it might have been high because nobody really needed the work.
Well, I'll add to that. I mean, basically, we ask all of the local contractors, all of the local commercial contractors. We sent them invitations. We've dealt with them here in the county, and we got 2 bids. One of them was from Lebanon, and one was from Lafayette. All of the local folks were busy, and they just did not want to bid on the work. I mean, I literally did everything but beg. But sometimes that happens when there's a lot of work going on, and that's kind of how things have shaken out toward the end of this year. Everybody's busy. But yes, if pick a time, if you want to rebid, that's fine. But
What were
yes,
the
ma'am.
bids? Remind us what those bids were, I don't remember.
The 2 bids were, I think Michael may have a copy of them. They were Stockton Building Corporation out of Lebanon, and Larry Clark
Okay, so it's-
out of Lafayette.
So we have a bid of $176,000 and a bid of $236,000.
Yes, ma'am. I believe that's correct.
I don't know who would answer this, but have we talked to different towns such as Monterey, the other towns that have done these, to see how they pull theirs together?
For instance, and Dawn and I both work for the town of Monterey in different roles, but in the town of Monterey, theirs is about this same size.
Just a little bit smaller.
A little bit smaller. But we found out afterward there were some numbers there but it was skewed because the materials were donated by a local supplier, because they had some steel in theirs and some block and things like that. And I think that's kind of what Dawn was mentioning, and Judy, that possibly there could be donations. It's a possibility. It's just something that would have to be looked into if that's what everybody wants to do. Other things that we can consider, if you want to rebid it, we can look at, sit with the group, try to take things down a little bit in scale. We talked to the low bidder, and we had some deducts in the bid, and we could talk to him and see, can we take things off? We've got brick here, can we make that block? Can we take the block off? You know, we were just trying to kind of dress it up based on comments we had, but basically it was a brick, block, and wood structure. It wasn't anything, we tried to keep it as simple as possible. Obviously, we got higher bids than we're anticipating.
If we do any of those changes, they're going to add to that $9,950.
Yes, sir, they will.
Okay.
Because that's basically redesign.
Just to ask the people who were in here before we were, what was your understanding of what the city would be on the hook for? Because everything when I asked around, it was like they said like no more than 10 grand, probably closer to $5 grand. What was y'all's understanding? I'm just curious.
The 23 or whatever.
23.
Yeah.
23.
Okay.
And then also, I don't know what the people you've spoken to have, their understanding of the amphitheater was supposed to be. Because they're talking about the noise, it's not going to be a loud venue. It's not something that we're going to have concerts every weekend. We're talking about having plays, maybe an occasional afternoon concert.
Local music.
Local musicians, you know, community theater, people from the high school, you know, they have their fall concert, let the high school band play there.
Well,
So
probably
is that the
veterans
type of event that
things
they're
and things like
concerned
that.
with?
Well, I mean,
Because,
I'm
you know,
just, I as a normal person, I hear amphitheater. I hear of
What do you think of
a
Starwood?
theater that
Yeah.
amplifies sound. So, I mean,
Right, I mean,
that's kind of what it means.
if
So
you look
that's
at
what I'm
the
thinking.
design, it's an amphitheater in
Yeah.
design, but that's not the type of event we were discussing. And we did have 3 public hearings, and no one came to any of them.
Okay.
Okay, there were like 5 high school students at one. They thought it was a great idea because they could put on plays and concerts and things, but there were no adults that came to any of the public hearings.
Yeah, I wasn't on the council at the time. I just remember I remember coming in and talking to Mayor Dennis at the time, and he said, "I have a surprise to tell the council tonight." It was a surprise, and then after it was like, "Well, we're doing this amphitheater," and it's kind of like I didn't hear anything about these public hearings, and I know that with a lot of people who've had problems in the past getting that public hearing out, as we saw last council meeting, there were people here saying, "Hey, I wasn't aware. I wasn't told about this, and I even was promised I would be told about it." So on this thing, and just as at the time I was a citizen, you know, it was one of those things where I didn't hear about it. There wasn't anything that put out. So I feel like if we do rebid this, we should definitely, or look at it, should definitely let the public know that there's going to be an addition to the $9,950 to look at different changes, and also, you know, really get some support. Because I mean, I would say 9 out of 10 people I talked to, they were like, well, "What are we doing with this thing?" And so, and again, that's just knocking on doors. And I mean, I could have just knocked on the perfect doors, but that's what they were saying.
And also, it's a 2080 grant, so if it were 176,000, we're talking about 34,000 at least, right?
Yeah.
Some
Okay.
matching funds.
Mayor, could I speak? I'm on the Rotary Club, and Rotary has built a picnic shelter and a nice stage at the Ag Center for very low cost to the community, because we get local people. You know, somebody will say, Digger, for instance, he dug the footer, and Cumberland Supply donated some supplies, and I think if we looked at this a little bit closer before, I'm not opposed to, if we can't do it, we can't do it. We don't want to have a lot of cost to the city. I fully agree with that. But I would love to see it happen. I think it'll be just a benefit. That's pretty much empty lot, and we can't put anything else on it, but we could improve it for the citizens. If we could look at how we might be able to do that locally with donations, as Judy said, other people in the county, all of the county could benefit from it, so we might be able to get all of the county to work on it.
Where is it in perspective to the walking track that's also being worked on? Is it right by it, or where is
It's
it?
in the corner.
The corner?
It's on the low corner towards
Yeah.
the apartments.
Well, is this money still available, or has it been turned over, we can't get it, so is this a moot issue?
Well, I think the mayor asked Michael to send in a letter, but the letter was not sent certified mail, and the person that it was sent to was not, will not be in the office until Monday. I brought all the stuff to redo it tonight after the meeting, because it has to come from the city emails, to email it to everybody, to send it to everybody else. So, I mean, it wasn't, you know, it wasn't sent certified mail, so it, you know, it might be.
If we revisit it, what's the time frame that we have before something would have to happen, if we revisit this?
It has to be closed out by July of 2020, but we can always ask for an extension if we have to. And then we usually do a 6 month extension, 3 to 6 month extension past that.
Let me ask you, if we went under 70,000, if we get volunteers or whatever, there's no penalty for that, right?
You just have to match it at the rate, you know, whatever percentage rate.
Okay.
So it could be in kind.
Yeah.
Match.
We got to hit 20%. We just are on line for 20%, whatever that number is.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. You have to put up, okay, so if the total money is spent is like 50,000, you have to match it in money at 20%. So if the total project were 100,000 and 50 of that was in kind, you still have to match it at 20% of the 50,000.
The 50, okay.
Okay, so whatever money is put into it has to be matched at your rate. But any in-kind, you can't match it with in-kind on this particular grant. Some grants you can, but that's a really good question.
So if we were to find a piece of property that was away from this neighborhood, for instance, and we could relocate there?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Where did this information come from that it was a noise, going to be noise pollution?
I don't know, as Cole was saying, people have just expressed their
I'm
concern.
not doubting what you're saying.
I
But the
got a list
amphitheater
if
would
you want it.
face straight at the front of my house. And none of my neighbors, first of all, knew about it, and when they heard about it, they didn't have a bit of problem with it.
You know, I think it's something that we should be revisited, because if you've been to our shows that we've done in the courthouse, then those are, not bragging about it, they've become quite popular. And I think it's something that would benefit the community. There's another side to the community that likes this sort of thing, and I think it would be something that we should look at again.
And I'm kind of on the side here with Barbara. I mean, it's just, in my opinion, it's not. I don't think it's up for the taxpayers to offer entertainment. Now, if we can work on it to get volunteer grants where people like the Rotary Club or we want to go out and raise money for it and get involved, then we don't cost taxpayer money. We build something in our community we all like, and we're not on the hook for nothing. If we take that approach, But at the end of the day, I think we got enough infrastructure needs to go after an attack before we go after special projects. I like concerts, I like music, I like plays, everything, but I just don't think that's the responsibilities of the taxpayers to pay for entertainment.
Well, it's more to revitalize downtown. The grants that we're talking about is to revitalize downtown. We don't want our downtown to die, just like
Yes,
the
but
facade grant.
That's not downtown. That's in a revitalization of something that's not being used,
That's
and
part
it's
of our
not going to
city.
generate any revenue because it's not near any businesses. It's in a residential zone,
But
so
if we
it's
get
not going to
people
be
in
an
town,
economic
they're going to
benefit.
spend money
They're
everywhere
going to
else.
eat it at the restaurant.
Yeah.
They're going to eat at the restaurant.
Yeah.
It definitely does. Those studies, Sparta's got a study that proves that all of theirs is close to downtown, but I've talked to some people, they're not a real study in Monterey, but that they are encouraged by it bringing people into town.
Yeah.
No, it's not a direct flow straight to your door, but bringing people into town for events, for veterans affairs, for kids things now.
Yeah, like the Chamber of Commerce. It's
Right.
one of the things that they look when they're bringing businesses. They look at things like this, like
Exactly.
cultural.
And again,
activities.
and I agree, we want to do that, but again, I don't see it as a role of government to provide I see government should provide an area where people can invest, but not to provide the investment itself, which is what we're advocating to do with this. Now, if we can do it voluntarily through people donating, then yes, I think we're getting out of the way, we're helping and assisting, but we're letting the free market do its job. But if we're pushing it with taxpayer money, that's us promoting something that, and there might be studies and it might work, but it's just, I don't see that as our job as taxpayers.
Well, it's similar to the walking track. People, the studies also show that more people come in if you have walking tracks. More people are in.
As long as you can do it economically and not bear the brunt of what it costs to do it. If you can keep that percentage low, then it has a return on investment. If you're paying 50 or 60, 80% of the cost of what you're doing, then you probably do not receive the benefits substantial enough to make it worthwhile.
And that's right there, right by the pool. So there's somewhat of a recreation area, and so I do see that aspect. And again, it's not me arguing that it's a bad idea or a good idea. It's just my argument is on the responsibility of it being the taxpayer's responsibility, if that makes sense.
Well, I'm just more upset that it was done without council approval. Like the letter was sent without us even talking about it. Now we're having to go back and, we could have had a
It was my
discussion.
understanding from the former mayor that it was a moot point because it was $100,000 over what we could have gotten.
Well, but we didn't even get a chance
discussed
to,
rebidding
yeah.
it.
Well, I'm
But
more
it's
than
the
open.
council's
If
job
you-
to
if
rescind
you-
grants. We approve grants, but we also rescind
If you would like
grants.
to reopen it, I'm more than open to that.
Absolutely. It should have never gone out without.
Please go
We should have
ahead.
been rescinded without
Then please,
us
please go ahead.
doing it. So
Please go ahead, because if we have the matching grants, it's gonna be 20% of whatever you're gonna put into it. And then Mr. Evil has a point. Do we put infrastructure, how do we balance this out? So
And I think there's good common ground here. I know I'm not going to get everything I want out of it,
Well
but
said.
I think there's some good common ground that we can figure out how to do this. And I do agree that it should definitely be a council,
Right.
rescinding it. Yeah.
Councilman Watts, what would you like to propose?
I would like that. Whatever we need to do to get that letter gone,
It hasn't been sent,
then
so.
we need to.
I can send an email out tonight if you want to, the different
I
people
don't think the
that.
letter's actually been officially sent, has it?
Did you send the letter?
Yes, ma'am, I sent it the day you asked me to send it.
But it wasn't done.
Yeah, was it done,
No.
I wasn't
based on
done to
the.
get it certified. I didn't know I was supposed
certified
to.
mail
No, so it
on the
officially
contract?
hasn't been sent yet.
Yeah, okay, so I can send an email to everyone tonight before I leave.
Could I have a proposal of how you want to go forward with this?
Just
I'd like to rebid
we just
it
need to
and then
rebid it,
explore other
and
funding
then just
options.
yeah.
I think we would, I don't mind making the motion that we rebid the amphitheater and attempt to resend the letter for the time being until we can research this further and try to find better alternatives.
Mr.
Good.
Warren, are you aware of anybody else we can try to bring in to bid on this?
We can certainly try to contact them. We contacted probably 15 or 20 contractors, and we put it out on the various plan
So the two
notification boards. We can try different people, or the people can get, how do I say this, less busy. And one thing that we can do, I mean, yes, there is some cost and time involved in that, but we can sit down if you want to have a group together. We can look at this and see, can we take things down a notch in scale? Can we take something off? You know, look for some value engineering type options to see. I mean, it's a pretty straightforward thing because it's a timber roof, it's block, and it's concrete. But, you know, I learn something every day, and we can set it around the table and take pencils and mark it up, see if we can take it down, change the shape maybe. There's various and sundry things we can do. I would ask one thing is that if we don't want to go, we've kind of held the low bidder. He knows what's going on, but I would like to release him because he has a bid bond and he has some other things. I would like your permission to do that because that can free him up, that frees up his bonding capacity. And then we can go forward and look at other options if that's the will of the body.
And just because you made a note and you were going to add to it, if I can add something to it as well, Councilwoman Scott's talking about some of the neighbors that were concerned. Maybe we can open this next meeting up to the public again, just to get those concerns and we can get it out. Because I've got a list of a lot of people who did say that, and I can get a hold of them and just tell them, hey, this is going on. And that way, you know, like it can be explained to them how this is going to work, and they don't feel like they just got blindsided by it.
And if they're opposed to it, I don't have a bit of problem with that, but I think I know the people in my neighborhood that are influenced and impacted the most by it didn't know a thing about it.
Yeah. So, and I mean, if we can put that in there where the public's involved, I'm in.
Well, I guess we'll have public hearings on it anyway. Is that? We have.
Yeah,
I mean, normally.
Parks and Recreation.
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna say, you knew I was speaking to you. Have you set your committees? Jacqueline was the chairwoman of the Parks, Recreation, and Wellness Committee, and
We're in the process of doing
okay,
that.
because that would be a good way to, through the committees. Maybe send out a letter.
There's no sense revisiting all this and doing all this work until you know that the grant's back on the table. So I wouldn't worry about getting bids or doing anything until you know that Dom's got that secured.
Well, as far as that, we know that letter has officially never been sent, so.
I will, I'm
Just
writing the email right now.
double check it.
Mayor, do I have the clarification to release the current bidder?
Is that,
That's, I just want.
Motion to release the current bidder.
I'll second.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
And I'll need a second for his motion to do what you just said.
Oh, second.
So we're moving forward to see if there's another bidder? Is that our next step?
We need to make sure we have the grant first.
And possibly revisit the design and see if we cannot simplify it better and make it more economical.
Was it an amphitheater?
It was a stage with a
Like
roof.
open air is what
It
I'm
was
saying.
open air with a roof. It wasn't a big amphitheater, you know, it was, you're not gonna get.
Does
busy
it have
time.
to be an amphitheater?
You can always start in stages.
It's, you could call it
Yeah.
something else. But, it has to be, first, it has to be amphitheater adjacent.
So if you built an amphitheater, I saw the plans,
Yeah.
by the way. And you wanted to add something onto it in time,
Oh, absolutely.
raise money, have a fundraiser, whatever, and close it in eventually. It could be done that way. When I saw the plans, it could be. So it's just not, you know, like amphitheater, the bad thing about that is it's winter. You know, what happens to it? When you could use it year round.
Yes, and that's,
That's
when
one
people were
more
talking,
design it would
and I point to Barbara Knapple, because, every time someone would say something to us at one of the meetings and stuff like that, I would say to Jerry that, and that's how those designs had all those different stages where it eventually, stage 4 or 5 was like enclosed. It would actually be, if you wanted, it had bathrooms, and I mean, these were all just ideas that if you guys ever wanted to go forward, you already had the designs there and how it would look.
It was basically kind of laid out in phases, with the idea being that you could come in, as you said, add to or take away, but basically starting out with just a basic stage,
So-
and then kind of building block from there.
So the 176,000 was just for this basic you're talking about? Is that
Yes,
the one
ma'am.
you're gonna release, or is that the one?
Yes, ma'am, that's the current low bidder, and I will just release his bid bond and tell him that, you know, you've elected to revisit the project or rebid the project, and that's basically all he has to know.
Here's what I'd like to suggest, and Don, can you find out tomorrow, would you give me an email? I will contact Mr. Warren, you can put out the bids again, if that's okay with y'all, and we can go
Shouldn't
from
we
there.
revisit
Yes.
and redesign slightly, or see if we can downsize before we put bids out for the same thing?
Who, are you designing this, or who designed it?
Yes, ma'am, I mean,
Who did that?
we can basically take the design that we have, work with the committee, and see if there are changes that, like I say, perhaps make things smaller, take things off, what have you. That's one way to do that, yes.
Can I make a motion to table this until we find out what's going on with that and talk about it at the next meeting? So that way we don't make any decisions until we know exactly
Great
what's
idea.
going on.
I'll second that.
All right,
Okay.
all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay.
I've got a question regarding it though. Who was the grant through?
Department of Tourist Development.
It didn't get rolled into ARC then?
No.
Okay, good.
Okay. All
Um,
righty.
The other grants, was there any other questions on the other grants, or the little spreadsheet of your leveraging of these grants? Anything that's in gray was what we talked about, maybe not going forward with. Anything in blue is what you have open, closed, monthly payments, just now. You have other water and sewer grants that are with Warren and Associates, your engineer, that are with revolving loan fund, and they're not on this little list that I gave you. So,
What about the paving of the walking track? Did we get that grant
we
already?
did, we got the grant, we've been to the meetings, Michael and all of us went to the meetings. We haven't gone under contract with that grant. They're gonna do contracts in February, and I believe the mayor has already spoken with the funding agency about it. But, I'm not sure what you've spoken to the funding agency.
Yeah, this is the extension of it.
Is there any money available to, there's about probably 30, 40 feet that needs to be raised with possible some more drainage in it?
We talked about the drainage issue, and that was a part of the new grant. This grant was to address the issues that there was more water down there than anybody could ever think.
I can tell you all about it.
The only grant I'm not familiar with is this funding for prevention of intervention of youth, Tennessee Office of Criminal Justice grant. What is that about?
That is a grant that is for a 3-year period. It's a grant for cities or counties can get, and it is to provide programming. It's kind of almost enhancing the program you're already having, like at the spot and the Drug Coalition, through the courts, through your churches. It's to coordinate everybody together and to try to provide programs that are that will address issues that are in your community.
And that's 100% grant.
It's 100%
Okay,
grant.
so, and that's one I know a lot of people would, and I had no idea about this. That's a lot of our constituents would be, because what was everybody saying? We've got nothing for kids to do, and that's something we could. Now, is that like say we want to we want to have a building for, nothing like that? Like what?
It's
What is it?
program money. It's
program
money to do things that could. And Barbara Knappel can probably talk about some of the things that they're already doing in the community at State Hanson through the ACEs and positive programming and things like that. It's to do programming and
Reduce juvenile delinquency. Programs that would help kids that were at risk, mentoring programs, training teachers in harm reduction, the kids that had been through trauma.
Gotcha.
Adverse childhood experiences. So there's a lot of talk now about that and how we can build resiliency in those kids that have had trauma. such as what goes along with substance abuse in the home and that kind of thing.
Am I mistaken?
Incarcerated parents.
I think you mentioned the Judge Collins program.
Right.
Is this where that money's going or something?
Right,
Is that
right. He's gonna be the subcontractor, his program is gonna be the sub-recipient of the grant, and he's going to oversee it into the community and work with groups like Barbara's group and different groups and stuff like that that are already doing things.
Like for example, I had a law enforcement officer approach me about a program to do, like it was like roller skating with kids, and it'd be led by law enforcement, and they do it possibly over here at the old roller skating center. Would that be something that would fall into this grant possibly?
I went to the training, the 2-day training, and nothing you said would be outside the parameters of it. All you would have to do is go to Michael Collins and say, is there a way we can fund this type of project?
So he's in charge.
So he would be in charge. Now, here's the caveat to all this. We signed the contract on this, but the federal government had a new stipulation under the Trump administration, and it was sued by ACLU, and so they settled the lawsuit. So just as they settled the lawsuit and they were gonna release the grant to all the JAG recipients, the shutdown happened. Now, the JAG grant is the only grant in the whole Department of Justice that is not affected by the shutdown, but some of the staff working on it. So we are going forward on it, but it looks like it's gonna be, they're not gonna even try to start implementing it until the 15th of January now. So we haven't even started talking about it with Michael Collins or anybody, you know, so.
Okay, any further questions about any of this? Okay, I do want to get some clarification and see what y'all want to do. I'm not real clear. We had a tax bill that came to us about a piece of property on Water Street, and Michael pulled up the deed. So I would just like y'all to take a look and see what you think we should do with this. Basically, it appears there's nothing that can ever be put on this property. We have to clear it off and maintain it, our maintenance people do. So you tell me, what do we need to do about this? Take a look at it and see its restrictions.
Let's get that.
Anybody have one?
Do we have a street 911 address for this parcel?
The address is 309 Water Street? 309 Water Street? 309 Water Street, yeah. And as you see, there's no residential purposes, no below the house, level homes, no trailers, no, nothing, no job, no whatever. But we've got to keep it mowed and neat in appearance, and apparently there's still stuff that has to be removed from the house that was there that we haven't finished yet.
How did we receive this property?
Y'all tell me, it was done, what, last year? Does anyone know what happened here?
Donated from the bank. Did the bank donate that property?
Well, we're trying to follow that, what this was all about. It's all about, maybe some of you who were here last year when this happened might know. I really don't know.
If nobody knows, before we make any votes on this, should we look into find out how we even obtained, so we know what to go forward on it?
Research, yes.
Do some research on it?
Yes.
There should be a prior deed that would show
Well, this
where
is
the
your
bank
deed
was.
here. This is
There
all
should be prior deeds.
I guess, but I don't have it.
Mr. Gray sold it to, no, Mr. James sold it to Citizens Bank, and Citizens Bank deemed it an eyesore. Citizens Bank wanted to get rid of it. Citizens Bank didn't want anything built there. Citizens Bank transferred this to the city with these stipulations for no consideration.
In other words, they want us to do the dirty work, tear it down, and the expensive work.
So it's a useless piece of property that we own?
Exactly. That our crews have to maintain and finish tearing down, so. Well,
And there's
what you wanna do about
nothing,
this.
there's nothing we can put there?
Nothing.
You can sell it and
Sell it to neighbors?
You can put a commercial building there.
Well, no, it's not zone commercial, is it?
Too small for an amphitheater.
There you go. That's where,
Amphitheater for ants.
so y'all think it over, because I don't know what to do with this, and maybe we can talk about it next time.
Could we, could we put it down as, basically sell it to a neighbor possibly? And, use it as yard? I mean, I don't know why we have this.
To me, it appears to be a hole in the ground.
Have we, there's a structure on it, in other words?
And there was apparently no old house.
No, there's not now.
Not now? Okay, I can't place exactly where it is, but I'll find
It's
it.
right below Citizens Bank parking lot. Go down the hill, and it's right. It's to the left. To the left.
Right there.
Okay, I know what we're talking about. Because if you go right down there, it's the previous mayor.
Right next to the previous mayor. Okay.
There's a foundation left there, but that still has to be torn down, something has to be torn. And our men are having to do all this work, and I don't know if it's fair to them.
Is it feasible for the fire department to burn it?
No, there's nothing.
Just clean up rubble. Okay.
I mean,
The house is gone.
it's in my opinion, I don't see why we even need to add. Well, this is the whatever was standing there,
Well,
right over in the corner. But
It's just straight down, it's not even a piece of property, actually. It's
But
just a
I mean,
hole.
again, it's kind of like the bank didn't like looking at it,
I have
and they
no
bought
idea.
it, and then they gave it to us,
don't
and now
have-
we have to deal with it.
Let me ask
How do
you
we
this.
how do we get out of this? How do we get out of it?
Is
Give it
there,
away.
That's above my pay grade.
is there a way to, because a lot of people go after, to reclaim wood from barns and things like that. I know the house between your place and my daughter's, that they had some people come in to reclaim the wood, and
There's nothing to reclaim.
It's all gone. Everything's gone.
And an old tree and a bunch of debris.
So how much?
And a hole, it goes straight down.
So we paid $10 for it. And we
Probably didn't pay
what do we
anything.
pay that for it? Okay, so we're not out on money. We could regift it.
Just some time.
You gotta keep mowing and stuff.
Yeah, we got to maintain it.
That's the problem, we have to.
Well, if we
have to maintain
re-gift it, we can require them to mow it.
Exactly. Whoever the new owner is, they'll have to
Is it
keep
parking?
up.
Parking. Is it possible for parking? There's no. It's just a straight shot down.
Well, the back side of it's a cemetery, so
Oh yeah.
fill it in with dirt. There's,
Bury people, okay.
that's what he said.
Is it a
Cemetery.
private cemetery?
No, it's not
Part of the
It's
city,
ours.
city
Yeah,
cemetery.
City cemetery.
Yeah.
I think there's also a ravine that goes through it in water, so it might be a little tough
There's
to
a
look
wall
at
that
it.
goes through it.
Could I mean, would y'all be for tabling it? I wouldn't mind going down there and looking at it. I don't
I'd
know
like to
about
look
y'all.
at it.
I'll have to go look at it
I'd
before I
like
make a
to get y'all to
decision.
research it, I have no clue.
And it's my understanding that because it's city property, that the inmates would not clean it up, correct?
Yeah.
Right.
Probably not.
Well, I'll make a motion to table this till
Alright.
we get a chance to go look at it.
It's a great idea. Motion to table, second on that.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right. We're going to go a search and recover mission here to find out. Love it. Okay, anything else here?
Yeah, I'll say one more thing if there's any way I could mention one more thing.
Okay.
So, the Department of Transportation contacted me about the Walton Road Scenic Byway, and I guess some of you have been around for a while. You know that I put this packet together back in 2013, the corridor management plan, and it's Carthage, Cumberland, let's see, it's Smith County, Cumberland County, Roane County, and Putnam County. And it's the old Walton Road, built in 1801, and it's an inventory of all the natural, historical, and scenic assets of that 90-mile section of mostly Route 70. And they contacted us because when we put this together, we thought we were going to get some projects funded through this. We had a whole bunch of projects and stuff, and the funding ran out. They decided to do the funding. We had a meeting, and TDOT came, and they said that they would like to come to your town and talk about the corridor management plan and how it relates to what the state is doing transportation-wise. And Bill Woodard was the person that represented you at the meeting, and we had it in Monterey. And we took some real good notes, and we'll try to set up a meeting for you guys and everything. We'll talk with the mayor about this, but, if you have never seen this, you definitely need to see this. It's a really great document, it has some really neat plans. We found 15 more copies in someone's barn right before the meeting, so I have some extra copies, so if anybody wants a copy of this, we'll make sure, and it's also online. So, but I just wanted to say, you guys were well represented, and I mentioned some of your cool projects in your downtown about it, so you were definitely well represented.
We do have one more item, I'm so sorry. I'm putting together our planning commission, so we have to have one member from here, from the council, so basically, some knowledge of our zoning code, our subdivision regulations. If you don't have it now, you will need to read all of those and have pretty good working knowledge. As you know, you all know what the planning commission does. People who want to bring plats, build something, whatever, they come to you. It's the basic. It's, of course, you've got the zoning boarding appeals, which is a whole different thing, but if someone's interested, please say so. If you want to just do nominations, however you would like to do this, but I need one member that you select here from the council. So-
I'm interested.
I'll nominate you.
Any other nominations, interest from anyone? Okay, well, do I have a motion that we select Mr. Eagle for this?
I motion.
Okay,
Second.
okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? All right, that's the end of our business.
Additional business.
Uh-huh.
Joanna, do you still want to talk about your water bill? Are you good? Okay. All right.
I've got
Thank you.
one thing that was brought to me. Cole, next to you go to Johnny Ray's church, Jackie Johnston's
Yes.
church. That abandoned house that's next to it.
Yeah.
He mentioned something about. I don't know what's going on with it. Maybe you could tell me more.
Yeah.
I guess it's a. You know which one I'm talking about, Les? You know, down on
You can't see it.
First Avenue, like you're going down towards the sewer plant. Yeah, you know, I guess.
We tried to tear that down once, they went with us.
Yeah, basically, it's a drug habitat.
Yeah.
There's people in there smoking whatever,
You know what I'm
and
talking
shooting
about,
up in there. It is not good. We got a playground right next to it.
Yeah.
And now it's private property. This guy owns it who lives in Nashville.
Is that Frank Smotherman?
Yeah.
Was that
and
right?
The church offered to buy it, just to make a parking lot, just to tear it down, just because it was a hazard. And it's basically a public hazard. I mean, if
In the
somebody goes
middle
on
of a
there-
parking lot.
yeah, in the
Yeah.
middle of a parking lot, and I don't know what steps we take to
So what, I'm
get
sorry,
rid of it.
what is it you're wanting to do?
Well, I think we probably need to condemn it.
Yeah, basically.
I mean, we need to condemn it and then tear it down or whatever we need to do. I'm not sure what the.
Letter to the property owner telling
Yeah,
them
that's
Well-
that they need to
legal
get it
procedure. We
in,
can't
up
do
to
that.
snuff, if in fact it's that bad. You don't want to condemn it, 'cause
No.
Well, just whatever needs to be done, whatever steps have to take. But it's obviously
Yeah.
been an ongoing
Does
problem
anyone
that
know?
we've
Discussed
that we've
that
discussed
before.
several times.
Does
But we need to
anyone know
just.
that?
I can get the information. Pastor Dawson, he's got the information.
Is there anything with the house that's violating any codes right now?
Probably every.
I'd say
code.
probably everything. Yeah, because it's abandoned, and
I mean,
it's
you
like
go inside of it. I took some
Behind the church.
Yeah.
Yeah.
some pictures of it.
yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
that's it.
overgrown. It's completely overgrown.
That's a Richmond house.
Okay, well, can
It's
we
not
let,
even a house anymore.
No, it's not.
can we let our,
Hell, it's just.
may we let our city attorney follow up and see what needs to be done first to start this procedure? Right?
please.
Yeah.
Yes.
If nothing else,
All right.
by codes, you can send him a letter if there's grass over 8 inches high, that he has 10 days to leave to get it taken care of.
So we
It's
will,
grass for the weeds.
you will give your information, how to contact him, Mr. Eagle? Your information?
I sure can.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, any further additional business here? All right, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?